Welcome back, everybody. We're diving into a world that I bet most of us have thought about at least once or twice, and that is the super secretive world of a papal election. And our guide for this journey is Robert Harris and his thriller, Conclave.
Such a good choice. Harris does a phenomenal job setting this whole thing up because we are not talking about just any election here, are we?
Right, like how do you even begin to choose the next leader of the Catholic Church?
Well, that is exactly what 118 cardinals are trying to figure out. Locked away inside the Vatican, no less.
No internet, no contact with the outside world, right?
Nope, none. Just them, their faith, and a whole lot of tradition to guide them. And, oh yeah, they also have to deal with all the ambition and secrets floating around in there, too.
Okay, so the book is called Conclave, which I get is like the name for this gathering of cardinals.
Oh.
But what does that actually mean? Like, what happens in a conclave?
So, the conclave is the official name for the gathering, right? But it's also a process. Centuries old, incredibly complex. And you're right, these cardinals are there for one reason: to elect a new pope. Harris does such a good job of bringing those procedures to life. Like, you can practically feel the weight of history bearing down on them.
Yeah, and then there's the intensity of the situation itself. You've got Cardinal Lumley, the Dean of Cardinals, who's suddenly in charge of this whole massive event.
And he's leading this whole thing while dealing with some pretty serious doubts of his own, questioning his faith even, which I think makes him very relatable.
Totally. He's not just some figurehead, like you said. He feels real.
Harris takes care to paint him as a fully developed character, someone dealing with a huge responsibility but still a human being, you know?
Yeah.
And that makes you wonder, if I was put in charge of electing a new pope, would I be having a crisis of faith too?
Right. Like, how do we choose leaders, especially for institutions with so much power? And how do those leaders handle that responsibility once they have it?
Those are the big questions, aren't they?
Huge. Okay, but back to Conclave for a second. Harris also brings this setting to life. The descriptions of the Vatican especially. St. Peter's Basilica, the Casa Santa Marta, where they're all staying. It's almost like the Vatican is a character in itself.
It absolutely adds to that whole atmosphere of secrecy and tension, right? The way he describes those hushed corridors and the heavy doors closing. You can just feel that something huge is happening, but you can't quite see it.
It's like peeking behind a curtain. And on the other side of that curtain, you have all these cardinals. And I gotta say, the cast of characters is so interesting from all over the world with all sorts of viewpoints.
Yeah, super diverse. You've got your ultra-conservatives, your reformists, and they all have to figure out how to work together.
I imagine that makes things even more, well, dramatic.
Oh, for sure. Imagine, right, a cardinal from Africa pushing for social justice up against, say, a traditionalist cardinal from Europe hanging on to centuries-old doctrine.
Yikes. Okay, yeah, sparks would fly.
You can bet on that. Because this isn't just about qualifications. This is about these huge differences of opinion within the church itself.
And somehow they're supposed to come together and choose a new pope.
Right. So they argue, they debate, they vote, alliances form, and then shift. Secrets come out. It's like this high-stakes chess match, but with the future of the church hanging in the balance.
Because the stakes really are that high, aren't they?
Yeah.
Millions of people around the world are going to be impacted by the decisions made in that room.
Every single vote, every little whisper, it all has this immense weight to it. And Harris is just a master at building the suspense. Like, I was on the edge of my seat the entire time wondering who's going to win and at what cost. Right?
Exactly.
It's that cost that gets you thinking, right? Because Harris isn't just writing about politics and maneuvering. He makes you wonder about each character's real motivation, what they're really after.
It's true.
Yeah.
Because it's not all, prayers and grand pronouncements. You see those moments of ambition, even some ruthlessness. Makes you think, like, does power always corrupt? Even in a religious institution like this.
That's the core of it all, right? Harris isn't afraid to show us those flaws. The cardinals making compromises, putting what they want ahead of, well, the sanctity of the whole process.
It made me think of all those scandals, the ones we've seen play out, not just in the Catholic Church, but everywhere, really. It really drives home the point that human nature is going to be human nature, no matter how much tradition or ritual you try to cover it up with.
Speaking of rituals, though, the conclave itself is full of them. Secret ballots, the votes being burned, that white smoke signaling a new pope. It's all there. And Harris, with his background as a journalist, he explains all those procedures so well. It's clear and interesting, even if you don't know anything about the Vatican.
Yeah, I felt like I was getting a crash course in Papal Elections 101, but it was never boring. Harris weaves all those details into the story, into the suspense and the characters. You're just hooked.
That attention to detail, that's one of the things that makes Conclave so good.
I agree. Some people might think it's a little dense at times, but I think it just adds to how authentic and immersive the story is. It's like you're really there.
Exactly, like you're right in the Vatican watching everything unfold.
And then that ending, oh my goodness.
Did you see it coming?
No,
Mhm.
not at all. It was a total shocker. But then it makes you go back and think about everything you just read in a whole new light.
That's what Harris does so well. That twist, it just gets to the heart of everything, right? What
Yeah.
we thought we knew about everyone, why we thought they were doing things. You start to question everything, what's true, how easy it is to be fooled.
It's like he's telling us, don't just trust what you see on a surface. Look deeper. Question what you think you know.
Exactly. And that is what makes Conclave so thought-provoking, so much more than just a thriller. This is a story that stays with you. You keep thinking about it, questioning your own ideas about power and ambition, the institutions we're supposed to trust.
So we've got incredible setting, complex characters, and this plot that just keeps twisting and turning. But what does Conclave say about faith? Is it like a cynical view of the church? Or is there some hope in there too?
That's a great question. And I think Harris is really walking a tightrope there. He does show us the flaws, the potential for corruption, those struggles for power, but he also shows us moments of real, genuine faith. Characters struggling with their consciences, trying to do what they think is right, even when it's hard.
Like he's saying, even in this huge institution, this old, powerful church, there's still room for individual conscience, for doubt, for searching for something bigger, some greater truth.
That's exactly it. And I think that's what makes Conclave so compelling, so interesting to think about. Because it doesn't give us easy answers. It doesn't make it simple, good versus evil. It shows us how complicated faith and power really are and lets us figure out what it all means.
Definitely made me think, that's for sure. And speaking of sparking thoughts, we have to talk about the fact that Conclave got a ton of critical acclaim.
Oh, yeah. Reviewers love this book.
I mean, USA Today praised the ending, called it a whopper of a surprise. The Guardian said it was unputdownable.
And the Washington Post. They called it splendid. And the Daily Express said it was slick and fast-paced.
It's like everyone was just drawn in, captivated by this look behind the scenes of the Vatican. I mean, this is a world most of us will never experience firsthand, but Harris makes it feel so real, so fascinating.
Yeah, and that really speaks to his skill, how talented he is as a writer. He takes a topic that, let's be honest, could seem pretty dry and boring to some people, and he turns it into this exciting thriller that makes you think.
He doesn't shy away from the complicated parts, but he still manages to keep you hooked, keep you turning those pages.
I'm curious, though, was there a specific character that stood out to you? Anyone you really connected with?
You know, I kept thinking about Cardinal Lumley. In the beginning, he just feels so overwhelmed, right? This massive task of leading the conclave just lands in his lap.
But as the story goes on, he kind of finds his footing, doesn't he? Exactly. It's like he's not only managing this whole process, but he's going through his own personal journey, dealing with his doubts, his faith, his own ambitions even.
It makes him so relatable, even though he's in this extraordinary situation.
Yeah.
Right? You see him questioning himself, wondering if he can actually do it.
And honestly, don't we all feel like that sometimes?
I know I do. Whether it's some big life decision or just trying to figure out where I fit in, we have those moments of doubt.
We do. And in a way, Lomelli's journey kind of reflects the bigger themes of the book, right? That search for truth,
Yeah.
navigating all those tough moral questions, and in the end, finding your own path, even when you're surrounded by these powerful institutions and all that tradition.
And we can't forget about the movie. I mean, Ralph Fiennes is Cardinal Lumley.
And Stanley Tucci playing one of the cardinals.
It's going to be amazing.
I know. I cannot wait to see how they bring this book to life, the atmosphere, the tension, all those little power plays. It's going to be such a captivating movie.
I bet it's going to be one of those movies everyone's talking about afterwards, debating about the ending, what they thought each character was really up to, that whole question of power and corruption in the church.
I hope it makes people want to read the book, explore all those themes even more. Because like we've been talking about, Conclave is more than just a thriller. It's a story that makes you think about leadership, faith, what it means to be human.
There's one scene that keeps coming back to me. It's near the end, When Lomeli is walking through the Vatican gardens, it's late at night.
Oh, yeah, that scene was so well done. This moment of quiet in all the chaos.
He's feeling the weight of everything, right? All that
Yeah.
responsibility. And he's surrounded by all this, I don't know, grandeur, the old buildings, those perfect gardens. But then he comes across some gardeners just taking care of the flowers.
Such a simple thing, but it says so much. It's like, even here, in this place of power and tradition, you can still find beauty, find humility in the everyday stuff.
Right. It made me think about how we all get caught up in the big picture, the headlines, all the drama. But sometimes the things that really matter are those smaller, quieter moments, like the gardeners tending to the flowers.
I love that. And it speaks to Lomeli's character, how he changes throughout the book. He realizes that leadership isn't just about being in charge. It's about being humble, being compassionate, seeing the value in those seemingly little things.
It's a nice reminder that even during a papal election, there's still room for human connection. Those moments that go beyond all the hierarchy, all the power dynamics. That scene, those gardeners, really makes you think about one of the biggest questions in the book. Does power always have to corrupt, even in a place like the church?
It stays with you, that question. Even after you finish the book, Harris doesn't really give us a simple answer. But you know, those little moments like the gardeners, those characters trying to do the right thing, it makes you think maybe there is hope. Maybe it is possible to have power and still, be a good person.
It's got to be a tough balance, though, right? Makes me think about the world outside the Vatican, too. Politics, businesses, anywhere there's power.
Absolutely. That's why this book hits home, I think. It's not just about the church, it's about all of us, human nature. What happens when we get tempted by power? The choices we make.
And those choices have consequences, right?
Yep.
Not just for us, but for everyone around us.
It really makes you stop and think about our leaders, the systems we've built. Are we encouraging good people? Or are we, just setting everyone up to fail?
That's a lot to think about.
Mm.
And I like that Harris doesn't try to make it easy for us.
Hmm.
He doesn't give us the answers. He makes us ask the questions, makes us want to talk about it, debate it even.
That's what a good book should do. It starts conversations, challenges what we think we know, makes us look at things differently.
So coming back to where we started, what really happens behind those closed doors during a papal election? Well, I guess we'll never know for sure. But this book, it gives us a peek, doesn't it? At the process, the pressure, all that human drama.
And it reminds us that at the end of the day, the people making these huge decisions, they're just people. They're not perfect. They have their own goals, their own weaknesses.
This would be such a great book for a book club, or even just a conversation with friends.
Oh, absolutely. There are so many ways to read this book, so many things to talk about, the characters, the themes, that ending especially.
And if you want to keep talking about books that make you think, that take you to different places, then stick with us.
Don't forget to subscribe to Name of Book Review podcast for more reviews and discussions just like this one.
Happy reading.